Hey, everybody. Today on the Agent Excel podcast, we have our guest, Kevin Kauffman. What's up, Kevin? How you doing, man?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for joining me. I just want to say I'm super thankful for you coming on. I think the listeners should know that you and we get on a call about every 4 or 5 weeks now, and I'm trying to figure out some challenges and build my business. So you're like just a huge influence. So I was like, you know what? I've got some more questions to ask you. Why wouldn't we just push record and let the world hear what we got to say?
Well, I'm excited too. I appreciate that, man. And I'm also excited because last time you and I push record, it was I got to put you on the hot seat and ask you a bunch of questions. So I'm excited to run this back the other way.
Right on, man. Hey, so let's go back a little bit. So I want people to know, I know your story, but I want the listeners to know your story. Let's just do a 2-3 minute overview of what got you into real estate, like what inspired you to actually get your license, and just how it's evolved over like the 15, 16 years that you've been doing this.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I appreciate you asking that because it means this particular part of my story, which I don't get to talk about much, means a lot to me. I had a uh, teacher and I was going to junior college. I was going because I was like a working adult. Um, and I realized at a certain point that I was just like, I was never going to make it in corporate America where I worked at the time. I worked for GE. And it turned out a big promotion for me, would have been a big promotion. And I was just like going to school, wanting to learn how to work for myself. And I had this gentleman, his name's Professor Goodner, and he made an impact on me. He talked to me about real estate. He talked to me about money. He talked to our whole class about it, but it kind of lit a fire for me. And so I reached out to him and I kind of made him my first sort of official mentor by default because I just started asking him questions and I started taking every class he taught for like 2 years. And while I thought I was learning how to be a real estate investor. What that ultimately led me to was becoming a real estate agent because the thing he instilled in me probably in the first time we ever had coffee was, hey dude, you're going to need to have a job for at least 5, 10 more years. I know you want to be this investor guy. You need an actual income every month though. And so my natural thought process of just not really know, I'm like ready, fire, aim was cool. I'll just get a job in real estate. Like if I have to keep working, I might as well just go get a real estate license and sell real estate, having no clue what that meant.
So you just get right into the business, or were you working a job in corporate and then also doing real estate? Like how long did that go?
So effectively what I did is I signed up for real estate school, started dragging my feet, and then I just realized I can't do this. And so I'm an all in or all out type of guy. So I quit my job and I finished real estate school. And then I decided to start selling real estate.
Right
So
on.
that was what I did because I knew that real estate was my path. I just didn't really know what was going on or how I was going to make it work. It was like May 2007. So for those of us who were in real estate then knows that the market was not awesome in Phoenix at that time. And but that was just happened to be the time I was doing it. So I just, head first.
Right on. That's around when I jumped in, and that was an interesting time. I think for you and I, it was probably actually good that we didn't go through, that was our first market. And so we just didn't know any better. So I sometimes tell people like, it was just kind of, like I needed to make money. And some people had a better, they came from getting higher commissions or selling higher priced homes. I just kind of came into it all falling apart. So I thought it was like great because not that it fell apart, but I was kind of like, this was a good experience to go through because I've known no different. So now as the markets change, I'm just like, that's what I came into. I was born in the chaos of real estate. Therefore, when markets switch, I'm like, all right, let's just figure this one out. It sounds like that was the same for you.
Oh, dude, 100%. Like I see it as an advantage. I saw it then as an advantage. And, fast forward 14 was going to be 15 years here pretty soon. I now know to a great level what an advantage that was for me.
Okay. So now how has the team evolved? So my goal is to get you on here because I know most people who know you just look at you as just a successful realtor, right? And you are. I want to just go through how that evolved of because I know you don't really have your hands in the day-to-day transactions anymore, but I know you once did. So I want people to see kind of the starting journey of how that happened and then how you got out of that role. So just kind of go through the 15 years, just 2 minutes of how that process worked with your team.
Yeah. So I've got a business partner, Fred, and he and I started officially working together February of '08. And that started officially because unofficially we did a few deals together later that summer of '07, and then decided partnering. And just really, we weren't even trying to partner. We are just trying to help each other make money. And because we were both doing short sales in '08. And so February of '08, we start working together. He brings his listings, I bring mine, and we just try to start building something, right? Truthfully, we were just trying to survive. And what happened over time was we realized we were onto something. We knew how to close short sales, which not a lot of people did. And then we were good about seeking out mentors and getting a lot of help from people. And so we kind of got a lot of unofficial coaching and mentorship from some people that have, had come before us. And so we started to build this real estate team like right away. And so in '08, he and I officially became business partners, and we probably closed 60 transactions that year, which was it was tough because like about 45 of those closed in the fourth quarter because short sales are anything but short, right? So it was a battle. And we made every mistake there is. And so if you look at our business in like '08 and '09, and it just kept going up through the end of 2012, like we just kept selling more and more homes um, every year. We were effectively the listing agents and the short sale negotiators. And we eventually evolved to hiring buyers agents. And then sometime in like 2000, I think 11, early 11 or 10, we hired an agent, promoted him to like the lead buyer's agent. We started this like showing assistant model that Gary Keller, who was our mentor at the time, was really promoting. And so we decided to give that a shot, and that was great. And we really like, if you've ever read Millionaire Real Estate Agent, and I know you have, Chris,
Mhm.
but like for the listener, we really were a very much an MREA uh, team. If you looked at our model, like the way just we took short sale listings instead of regular listing.
Right.
Obviously in 2012, that started to change a lot of things. Now, there's another part of that story where Fred and I got distracted and we actually became regional directors for Keller Williams Realty. We literally left the state of Arizona. Our business was still running in 12, but it was also falling apart. And so at the end of 12, like we both realized, like we just can't, I can't wear shoes every day, much much less nice clothing, and report to somebody. So we stepped out of that job pretty quickly, came back to Arizona as our two things were happening. Our business was truthfully falling apart because we were terrible leaders, and then the market was shifting. Like we went from everything was a short sale to almost nothing's a short sale anymore. Nothing's an REO anymore. And we had to learn how to be realtors. So the end of 2000, by the end of 2012, and I mean this literally, Chris, every person we had with us that worked in sales, either taking listings or working with buyers, had quit, walked out the door. So that left me and Fred. And so coming into 2013, I literally look at Fred. I'm like, well, I was like, I'll take listings. He took buyers, and we had to start over. And I always tell people 2013 is actually the year I learned how to be a realtor, because that was the year I had to learn how to win a listing, and I actually had to go to somebody's house to get it, because I'd taken, hundreds and hundreds, if not 1,000 short sale listings to that point, pretty much exclusively over the phone. And now I had to convince somebody who was in a, convince someone to hire me to sell their house. And so that was our first real big shift in our business model.
And how long did you do that position? So when the market changed and you knew like, hey, I have to actually sit at a kitchen table and compete probably with other realtors and not just be like the specialist of one thing. How long did you do that before you realized like that you didn't want to do it? That you didn't feel equipped to do it, or that you just were like, hey, I'm going to hire someone to take over that task?
Well, to be clear, I didn't feel equipped to do it right away. And I also didn't want to do it right away, but I also knew it was how I was going to survive, right? And
Mhm.
make money. Ironically, 2012, we sold 219 homes. I don't know that I listed any of them myself personally. But in 2013, when it was just us, we only sold like about 130, 140 homes, and we both made a whole lot more money that year. Right.
Mhm.
So, and we had to do it. Like, so we just made it happen. It took most of 2013 to really figure out how to become a good listing agent. Russell Shaw, who's been a longtime friend and a bit of a mentor to me, always said, like, you know, the way you become a really good listing agent, you start out as a really crappy one first, and then you're less crappy, and then you're kind of not crappy at all, but you're not good. And then eventually you get good, and then eventually you get really good. And I live that progression. I
Mhm.
really truthfully did. The way I remember him explaining that one time, like that was me in 2013 into early 14. So I went from the point of like, dude, I've always been good about, I can get appointments, got really good about tracking. You know, my coach, Glenn, he's been on us. I mean, the guy's been my coach since 2011, since January of 11. Um, he was always on us about tracking. So I knew that I was just terrible at getting listings. And so I knew where I had to get better. And then eventually I went from, you know, taking 20-30% of the appointments I went on to 60-70% of the appointments I went on for listings. And it was mostly due to Glenn and Glenn's wife, Ray, who helped me to really polish my listing agent skills. And understanding to the point of your question, I never wanted to do it the whole time. I just had to but I needed the results. I had to make it happen. And so we did that through 13. We hired a salaried showing assistant sometime in 13. Um, 14, sorry. Steph joined us in 2014 in April. So like, yeah, next month will be 8 years that she's been with us. Um, and then sometime around 2000, not sometime, it was July of 2014, had a conversation with Brett Tanner, where we, at the time, him and I owned a Keller Williams franchise together. And I said to him, Brett, will you sell me on your model? And he said, what do you mean? I was like, tell me about I'm doing this MREA thing over here. You're clearly not. Tell me that. Tell me what you do. And so he laid it out for me. And I was like, mind blown. I'm like, that's what I want. Like, I wanted to get further away from the transaction. So I went back to the office. I told Fred about it. Ben Kinney is a really close friend of ours. And I think the couple weeks later, we'd already scheduled, we were going, he was like, he's always been so gracious and trying to help us. We had gone, we went to Bellingham where he lives and stayed with him and kind of just shadowed him for 2 or 3 days at work. And we saw how his models worked and how much different they were than ours. And between the conversations with Brett and with Ben, we sort of formulated our own, like, this is going to be our model. This is how, in my words, like what I would, my self-talk, Chris, was, this is how I'm going to get out of the living room. This is the business. We literally decided to draw a line in the sand. And so sometime towards the end of 14, we really shifted things. We took our salaried buyer's agents. At that time, we had two, turned them into commission only, but also gave them the ability to take listings. And then I had to go start hiring more agents to the team. Um, and at this time, I'm really good at taking listings. And now I'm trying to scale what we have because we know the direction that we want to go. So that was a really big change for us. Sorry, that's a windy answer.
No, it's good. So why do you think that certain agents go the direction of trying to get out of the living room and some stay in it? Because like you and I, like we know each other. We have totally different paths, right? So we've been doing it almost the same. And I probably was in 4 living rooms over the last 2 days taking listings. And what do you think it is? Like, is it just is it just personalities, or like what do you think that is? Because I think there's a lot of listeners that some of them want to get out of the living room, which probably shouldn't yet, just because they're not there. I think it's fair to do something in your business that you tell yourself honestly, like, I don't enjoy doing this, but I have to do it.
Yes.
There's a healthy respect of knowing like, hey, I'm doing this, I want to get out of it, but I still have to do it.
So
Versus maybe being in a financial position where you can truly say like, I don't have to do this anymore and I can afford my lifestyle to get out of it. Where do you think that changes for different people?
So, man, I think you actually just hit the nail on the head in between what you just said. Is there's some nuance there, right? I think some people, I don't think, I know, because I mean, like, for a living since 2014, I've basically just talked to other real estate agents, right? Um, what I think I have observed is there are people who never get out of the living room, so to speak, for one of two reasons. Number one is um, they cannot give up the additional income that it would cost from a cost of sale, right? Because once you have another agent do it, all of a sudden there goes a big portion of the income, right? So what happens is real estate agents, we've all seen this. Some of us have lived this, is like my income goes up, so do my living expenses. Now I need and so I always need every single penny, even though I'm making a lot more money today than I was 3 or 4 years ago. So there's that aspect of it. There's also the person that they can afford it, and they are control freaks, and they assume that nobody could do the job as good as them, and therefore they must do everything. And and they might be great at it, but the reality is their need to control things prevents them from what they really want. Those are the two things that typically stop people from it. Now, there's some weirdos I know that are like, they're just they love it. Like, I think of my buddy Jeff Glover. That guy's a really great, like, he just recently, I think, stopped doing it because he's got so many other businesses going. But he's an amazing salesperson and he enjoys it. But most people fall into those two categories of they can't afford to, or they're control freaks and they're unwilling to let things not be perfect. On the other side of it, it's like where I think you and I probably tend to be very similar is I just I knew that while I would do it when I needed to, if I had to make the income, I just did not want my income to be dependent upon me me doing that job. I'm willing to do other jobs. I'm willing to do that job if I have to. It's just way down on the list of things that want to do given the choice. And so for me, it was about choice in my activities and the way my income is generated because the freedom I believe that it gives me. Like I'm not willing to work weekends. I'm not willing to work at night. And therefore I knew I needed a different sort of business model. And so for that, I think that's why other people do it because they have other desires or they want to grow the business as big as possible. And they're aware that if they're doing that thing, that's going to prevent them from doing something else that could impact the growth of their business, where they could really make a huge impact.
I think the two things you said are like the truest. I think a lot of it's just the finances. I really truly think that if people just didn't have that income creep come into their life, if they make another 100,000, spend another 100,000, if they could just get finances under control, that they would eventually just be able to get out of the game quicker. But I think the second one you said is the one I'm working on the most. And we can go into this, but you said control freak. And I've learned this over the last 2 years, probably more in the last year and a half with Glenn as our coach that we share, or that we both talk to, is we talk about control. And what I'm realizing now is I am a control freak. I'm actually honest to say that I feel that I do things the best. And what we found out is, and I have to look myself in the mirror now every day and say, no, you actually don't. Just because you got this ship to where it's at doesn't mean you're the best at it. It just means you got this ship to where it's at. Now, be humble enough and look in the mirror and say, could have this went further if you would have actually let some of it go? And I have to argue with myself and reconcile and say, yeah, it could. So I was listening to a podcast the other day and they were talking about when you let go of control, you have to have controls in your business as a business owner to look at. And so I want to go into that because it was actually a question that I had for you is, as you've scaled this team, Kevin, and it's something that I'm trying to work on, what are like your business metrics? Because you're not in your real estate company, I don't believe, a lot of hours a week. So how do you sit down and really, like, what are the metrics that you look at without getting granular to say like my business is doing okay? Is it just a P&L, or are there other like leading metrics?
There's definitely leading things. I was just having this conversation today because of something that occurred yesterday. So here's what we figured out. And because we do track metrics and very aware of those things. I know that in my business, and when I say my business group 4610, over thousands and thousands of appointments and thousands of transactions, we know that if an agent on our team schedules 10 appointments with buyers and sellers, that 7.5 of those people show up to the appointment. We know that 5 of those people hire us, and we know that 2 to 3 of those close a transaction in the next 12 months. And so I'll give you a perfect example, Chris, here. I think it was 2000. I think it was 2015. I guess it could have been maybe it was 16, whatever. It was at some point. Fred and I, our business lost about $100,000 in the first 3 months of the year.
Okay.
Neither one of us were scared. And the reason why is we'd seen as we were, because part of, you got to understand, like, so we also, maybe another part of the story I should tell is in 50, yeah, it was 16. So because in 15, we both were like, dude, we're completely out of the transaction. Like, I'm not willing to do this, not even over the phone anymore. And so um, we knew that our conversion ratios would go down, but we also were aware, like we already had an idea of that 10, 7.5, 5, 2.5 number that I just shared with you, right? So what we had seen though in that first quarter is we had seen how many new clients were hiring us, and we knew how many closings were coming the rest of the year. So like we weren't scared even a little bit. Like, not that it felt good to lose money. Um, However, we were not scared at all. So we really got clear on those metrics of appointment down to actually being able to put $1 in the bank account, right? And so knowing those things, those are the lead metrics that we were able to do, is based on appointments. Um, and then, yeah, obviously the P&L thing is important. We still review that at some point. And I think 2015 or 16, we started doing this thing where we just literally review every single dollar we spend every single week, which sounds over the top, but it's really not. Like, if you just do it weekly and you're just looking for things that are either
It can get away from you, huh?
yeah, if you
Like it
just
get like I'm doing it now just in my business. Like I have to focus on so many different things now that there are times where I'll have to say, outside of a P&L, I look at the big picture, but now I'm like, oh, I got to print off a bank statement here and there. And you'll go through it. Sometimes you're like, hey, that's 160, that's 180. I mean, I don't think I'm myself, we don't times that by 12. And we're like, whoa, that's 5 G's, that's 7 G's, that's 3 G's. I mean, that's a lot of G's in just 1 year off, just scratching off things. You're like, this is a waste of money.
yeah, and it's really easy. Like, especially when there's a lot of deals closing and you just like, yeah, that expense creep, man. It gets in there. So we just did that. And so it's forced us to stay honest, to not be drunken sailors when we're spending money. Um, which is good because Fred and I are both like, we're okay, we're both okay taking risks. And
Yeah.
so it's good to have that kind of control check in there.
What I see about you that I think that you, and you probably know, and someone's probably told you, but you, when you speak, you have these hard rules of like what you won't do. And I think that's where you probably have drawn the line in the sand with what you're willing to do for money or not. Because
Yeah.
you've said a few times, like, hey, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that. I don't think enough times we don't make a list and sit down and say, because sometimes we go around and we just like complain about things. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. But yet we're living our life. So it's like you could actually sit down and say, I'm not trading this for money anymore. And you've just drawn a line in the sand. And you're like, I'm not doing this, this, and this. And if that job is going to, go outside of my boundaries that I've set up internally for myself, then I'm passing it off. And I'm not going to trade that peace of mind for income, because then you just run into becoming an internal mess because you're just trading yourself out for money. But you say that like you say those things very hardcore, like I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that.
Yeah. I mean, and I mean it, because like, yeah, I mean it.
So what do you think, like with your team right now, who runs that then? Because I know you don't spend a ton of time into it. So do you have like a good leadership? Because I'm trying to figure that out internally right now in my company. Is how does your operation look from not just agents, but who's talking to the agents, holding them accountable? Is it Fred, or is it different than that?
Nah, so I should be really clear here. Like, we've gone through different iterations, right? Um, there's not a lot of accountability holding in our organization these days.
Okay.
Um, Fred and I don't do well with people that need to be held accountable. Um, you should want to do your job. And I'm not saying that I am very clear that if I decided to hold people accountable and be more present and active in the business, I know that we would sell more homes. I just don't care. I just don't, because I don't want to do that. Going back to your last point, I don't want to. So that said, um, I think what we've been able to build is a community and a tribe with the people that we have. And so we have this combination, truthfully, of some really good systems. There was a point where we were scaling our team across the country. We started selling real estate outside of Arizona in September 2014. So, like, literally, we've had an expansion team now for 7.5 years, which um there was some good and some bad that came out of that. Some of the good is like it's created some really great systems for us. And And so we've got the secret sauce of and the most amazing administrative transactional professional you've ever met in this business named Jill. And she's the glue. And she's super intelligent and everybody loves her. It's kind of how I always describe her as like half mama bear, half football coach. Like she will um she will tell you where you're screwing up and pat you on the butt and you'll love her for it and realize that how much better you are, and she can have those hard conversations, and we're just very clear on who we are. So there's no sort of like, if I was interviewing you for the team today, I wouldn't be telling you like, hey, I'm going to do this and this for you. I'm going to say, here's all the things that are available to you. Here's what this looks like. There's a weekly mentorship Zoom that my business partner Fred does. There's these other things. And then everything else we have is basically automated or kind of from the tribe, if you will. And so we're that's the thing that allows us. Now, we've done little things like accountability groups that last for like 6 weeks at a time that have been super effective for us. But I don't hold people accountable. I don't want to be in business with people that I have to hold accountable.
And let's go this direction now. Is where did you where did you find this? Like you're a great connector. I feel in real estate, if I ever need something and I text you, I feel like within 3 minutes you're texting me someone to get in contact with, right? Like for example, I just wrote this down just because I see this in you where you're just willing to go out and talk to people and ask them questions. I'm the same way. I just think like, hey, all they could do is say no. I wrote this down. So Kevin, I use your bookkeeper, your tax attorney. We use the same coach, podcast producer. Your sister-in-law does my transaction coordinating. You introduced me to the guy who helped me hire my showing agents. You linked me up with Fred, who got me linked up with my virtual assistants in Manila. And it's crazy because we've only been having conversations for probably, I've known you for years just from afar, but we've probably only been having conversations for like 9 months. Do you think that's like the secret sauce of real estate, is just people willing to awkwardly reach out to people and ask questions and be willing to be denied? Or what? Because I see it in you where you were like, you say I talked to Russell Shaw, and like I've learned a lot from that guy. But you keep using Tanner and Ben Kenny. And I have like I have like 6, 7 connections over the last 5 years. And you're one of them, thankfully, that has just linked me up with stuff that's a part of my story.
Yeah, I think it has been for me for sure. I realized like even my going back to like why I got into real estate, that my first mentor, Professor Goodner, like I don't know, I've just always been willing, like if I feel like I can learn something from you and I'm gonna like selfishly, I'm gonna go try to be a friend and learn something from you. And
Sure.
and I'm gonna try to do it by returning value. And so I think because of that, and like it's a very natural thing for me though. So I want to be really clear. I don't feel like I have this special skill I've developed. I do think a lot of it is me. I've relied on my natural. The thing that I've done is I've become aware of it, and I've learned how to harness it a little bit better. But like even all those things that you just said that I've referred you to, I didn't know that. Like so some of that is like it really is just super natural for me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really cool because I can see it from afar. Just I like, for example, my currency with my clients is I feel like I get 2 or 3 texts a day of, hey, I need a vendor. I need a vendor. And I'm that person to them where I'm like, that's cool that they text me and I'm solving their problem. And I realize that's why I get a lot of referrals. That's how I stay in contact with people. You're in the real estate community, like that person. If I was thinking,
Yeah.
even with some of the people I've tried to get on my show, I've used your name and they're like, oh, yeah, cool. Kevin. And
Yeah.
like right there, I'm like, that's powerful for you to know that. But like you said, it's probably not intentional. It's probably even better. I don't think you can probably pull it off if it was super intentional. It's just organic, which is probably better.
Yeah, I think you can't probably fake that. Like you could probably only fake
No.
it so far, right? And then it just people know. I think people know. People know when you're genuine or not.
Yeah.
And I think the reason I got into a lot of these relationships because I didn't go into them asking them questions for pure personal gain. There was a genuine curiosity, and
Yeah.
I just wanted I wanted to answer that curiosity, and so I think people respond well to that.
What's the what's your main focus anymore? Like when you wake up, I've noticed that, at each times of our careers, there's something that we're like that you're putting your force towards. What is that for you right now?
It's funny. You just mentioned a second ago about how what you are for your clients, how like a couple times a week you're basically the referral directory for your
Mhm.
clients. That's me for real estate agents. Like I'm that for real estate agents. I have my clients still too, um, or my sphere of influence. So I generate business for our sales team. I just don't transact it myself. But the majority of it is like I'm like, how can I go out and help real estate agents? Truthfully, that's my number one thing that I think about every day. And if you looked at it from like just pure realtor point of view, that's my sphere of influence. And I get up and I treat my sphere of influence in real estate as my sphere of influence. And so sometimes that looks like, hey, can what you need a referral for a coach, or you need a referral for a tax attorney, or a bookkeeper, or you need to learn about how to farm or how to show it. Like I'm just looking for opportunities. The way I'm looking for opportunities though is just by genuinely being in relationships with
Yeah.
people. And I listen. I don't know. People will tell you what they need if you listen. And if you're focused on what you're saying and what you need, you're going to miss a ton of opportunities to help people.
Right on. And as we're winding down here, go both directions on this for 2022. What are you most excited about, and what do you see your biggest challenges are, maybe from like the team aspect or business aspect? So most excited, and also what you think the biggest challenges will be.
I think the most exciting and the biggest challenge on the sales business are kind of the same thing, which is it's harder and harder to compete. Uh, the consumers are more and more confused more than ever. And I think what's exciting to me as well as a challenge is we have to figure out how to provide value and clarity to the consumer, to the average everyday home buyer and home seller. So I think those answers are really kind of one and the same. When it comes to like my other business of, I'll call it real estate agents, right? What I'm most excited about is like the things you and I just talked about for the last few minutes. That's become blatantly clear to me in the last couple months to a year. And it's been a kind of a couple year process. I started building a Facebook group called Next Level Agents. And then we started doing big live events. And all of the speakers were just my friends from around the country that I would call. And I love putting that together, sort of curating the content. And somebody said something to me during that process. It was Frank from Viral, who said something to me one time when I told him one of the guests, and he said something that is so inappropriate. I will not share it on your
Okay.
podcast,
Okay.
but I'll tell you in person one time. But it made me real. I was like, oh, this is something I do it's kind of a skill in a way, even though I didn't think of it like that. And so it's been this process, and my buddy Dustin Runyon has really like pushed me on this in the last year or two. And it's just realizing that, hey, truthfully, like my client, I hate to use that word, is the real estate agent. I've realized that I'm a resource for realtors. I'm here to help other realtors. I think the thing is, I've just gotten more and more clear on that. And as I've done that, I've realized that I have this ability, because of the connections you mentioned earlier, just that I've made with you, that I can help agents and brokers explore areas of their business where they're leaving money on the table, or they're leaving opportunity on the table, or they're just not aware of something. That's like, I've realized I have that ability. Not that I'm the Mr. Fix It for all of it, but I probably know who is.
Yeah, just an awesome connector, man. I appreciate you. So I'm so thankful, man, that you joined me today. What's as we end, what's one thing that I didn't ask you that I should have asked you that the listeners should know, or that some last sound advice from Kevin Kauffman?
You know what's funny, man? I realized this. This is gonna sound so self-serving. The guy,
Okay.
you know me. But I had this experience yesterday. I went to this class with realtors here in Phoenix. This is a big one too. It's like a couple hundred people. And I just realized, I was like, I don't know any of these realtors. I don't know anybody here. I literally just don't. I don't know anybody except for the agents on my team. I didn't know it. I hardly knew anybody. And I think what I tend to overlook is the fact that, I mean, dude, we still will sell 300. My team will sell 300 houses this year. I'll do it working an hour a week in that business. My business partner will work 4 or 5 hours a week in that business. And we're able to do that because we have systems, we have amazing people, and because we've taken care of our sphere of influence and our past clients for over a decade. Well, for, like 14 years now. And when you do that, when you do something as boring as like be the resource for your sphere of influence, your clients, like when they need a AC guy or, plumber or whatever, when you do that, you truthfully take care of people for a long period of time, day in, day out, it's kind of boring. But what happens is it compounds. And you look up one day and you like, literally, you start to wonder, like, how do you not sell more real estate? Like, you look at other agents, like, are you trying to not sell? Are you just
Mhm.
inventing stuff to make yourself busy so you don't have to sell real estate? Because if you just take care of people and you're really good to them and you build relationships, you can't help but to trip over transactions.
But I think I think that we, I get a lot of referrals, as you know, and it's so organic. So I think it's just something in us that we just want to go be of value to people. Like it's just in our DNA to off, like, if we did other industries, we'd probably be the same in those industries. Like we just want to provide value to people. Our service is just what we do. But
Yes.
like that's the service I picked. But like I'm still the same human being, whether I'm in this business or this business. So I've got to provide value to you. And I think that some people might be so focused on commissions and money. And if they just understood it from a high level, like in my office, I always say, just take care of the people. Like I have clients that I sit with. I'm like, hey, don't sell your house, rent it. Someone might be like, hey, you lost 16 G's. I'm like, it was right for the person.
Ah,
That's what you've got to do. And if you just keep doing that over the years, it'll compound. Like it's just the only way it can happen.
yeah, there's no, and you mentioned like the other business. The thing is, like, if you, most agents are focused on being an agent or salesperson. You mentioned the commission thing. Whereas if you take the time to, you don't have to. This is the beautiful thing about real estate. You get to pick. But if you take the time to learn the business and you truthfully learn how to run a great real estate business, you can run any business. Like you're fully equipped to run any business in any industry. Um, and like, because you can fill the technical holes with technicians in every industry.
Right on. So how can people reach out to you if they want to?
Yeah, probably the best way is our podcast is called the Kevin and Fred Show. Super originally titled there, or Facebook, you or Instagram. Like in Facebook, if I'm sure there's not that many Kevin Kaufmans, but you could just go to Next Level Agents, which is a Facebook group, and not be the only Kevin Kaufman in there, or on Instagram. But truthfully, or I guess even kevinandfred.com. So
Right on, man. Dude, I appreciate you. You don't know this, but, or maybe you do. I've told you once before, but I followed you from the short sell era. I actually have to say that you taught me my mindset in the short sell era. You didn't teach me actually how to do the transaction, but I think that's the coolest part is the technicalities of a transaction are one thing. The mindset's another thing. I actually would say the mindset's probably more valuable than the transaction, learning the tacticals. You got me through that era. And I followed you now for 15 years just from afar. We've got a closer relationship over the last probably 9 months. And I'm like super grateful to know you, and like what you do for the real estate community, you probably will never realize, but it's powerful. And I don't think you realize how many people you impact. And I just want to say thank you publicly.
thanks, man. I appreciate that. It means a lot dude, I respect you a great deal. And so I received that. Thank you.
Cool, man. Hey, appreciate your time, man.
All right, buddy. Talk to you soon.
Bye, Kevin.